I'd just like to warn you, I went to the grill for the wireless microphone, I had it all mapped out. Willie came over here and he pushed all the right buttons, still not receiving. So I don't know, I tried, no techie, so we don't have a wireless mic. So Chris and Dan, I assure you will speak up, and if you're sitting back and you can't hear, there's some chairs in front, okay? Or just slide your chair up to the sides if you wish, okay? Anyhow, last week was so incredibly informative, such an educational thing. I felt like I had a college course in 1 hour. And it was so concise and so well presented that it was easy to follow. And I can't wait to hear the phase 2 of this whole thing. So welcome back, and Dan and Chris are ready to go, right?
Yes.
Is our techie...
I'm fine.
You're all set?
Yes.
We're good to go. You're on, okay?
Okay, thank you very much for coming again. So before I go forward, I just want to show you something. We are talking about opium war in China, and it's an opium pipe. So people use it. There were a lot of them available in the old days in China. But now opium is not allowed, and then people make new ones, recreate contemporary opium pipe for collectors. So we happen to be in Hong Kong, and my wife bought one. Yeah, if you're interested, you pass it on, and then leave someone. Right? Okay. To make sure. I just want to recoup a little bit about what we talked about last week. Last week was basically historic, talking about what Hong Kong people came from, their culture, and so on. So I decided to go from the Qing Dynasty when the Europeans came and explored the world, including Asia, and occupied part of Asia, including Hong Kong and some other territories. Okay, and then the history background of China, the Chinese were basically obedient, harmonious, they did not know what to do about things because there was civil war, World War II by the Japanese. And they all came to Hong Kong to make a living, to want to have some quiet and peace after 1945. Okay, and they are very cooperative, they are very harmonious to the society. So that at the same time, then also presented, and the British came in, and then set rule and orders, civil service, and create democracy on voting, encourage Hong Kong Chinese to vote. And at first, there was no voted senators or congressmen. They were appointed officials by the government who are basically representing major business in Hong Kong, who are Chinese, and some of them are Europeans. And then slowly build up a network and divide up the voting districts in Hong Kong. There was no voting district at all. Open voting district and encourage the people to vote to represent themselves in the legislative council, which is looking into what is needed by the people and recommend to the government. The government is still the chief executive of the territory. So recommend what they need. All sorts of political things are decided, mandated by the British government through the government. So, but we do have some social freedom to do a lot of things. Okay. So now I started from there, and then in 1985. Now, in 1985, Margaret Thatcher went to Hong Kong and went to Beijing first. 1984 went to Beijing to talk to the premier of China, and suggested, okay, we would like the British would like to give back Hong Kong to China in 1997, which is the expiration of the lease of the County Plains. And then they come to an agreement. And then say, okay, they will do that. And then in 1985, they announced that Hong Kong will go back to China in 1997. Now that created some concerns. Okay, and they have a joint communique and announcing that, and they said that will be the basic law because the British said, now in China there's no constitution which is applicable for Hong Kong, but Hong Kong has been going through the common British law, and they have a fundamental framework of how the people govern themselves, Souza, which is the council right there. So they based on the British basic law, said, okay, we will maintain the framework as what we have been doing since as in the British government, and then we'll maintain the democracy as it is in Hong Kong, not the full democracy as in UK or in the United States. The type of democracy that is already established in Hong Kong. Let them continue to do that, which include free traveling, freedom of speech, freedom of converting currency, meaning the Hong Kong dollar is convertible. You can take Hong Kong dollar to any country and convert it to other currencies. During that time, renminbi, the Chinese currency, was not convertible. You cannot change the currency. So, which means they have their own currency. Hong Kong needs to have their own currency and their own reserve. All right. So Hong Kong Shanghai Bank, which we know is HSBC, was a de facto central bank in Hong Kong. All right. So for another 50 years, now that is the basic principle of that. But in spite of all that announcement and assurance, there's social uncertainty. People are not very trusting to their agreement. And then people started to migrate. Young people are well off. They migrated basically to Canada, to Australia, and some to America. Because America is the most difficult country to migrate to from Hong Kong. But the Canadian and the Australian are more open up. And then you see in Vancouver, if you go to Vancouver today, all the Chinese population were migrating there during the time of 85 to 97 and stuff. And they built up a huge economy. The same thing as in Toronto. It's also Hong Kong Chinese. Now they speak Cantonese. Hong Kong speaks Cantonese. But if you go to New York City today, in Freshmen, they all speak Cantonese because they were not from Hong Kong. They were from China. So after the opening of China, of the Chinese border, more Chinese from China, migrated into this part of the country. So because of this migration, the economy went down drastically between 1985 to 1990. Real estate price went down, and there was a brain drain. So because the young people, they are just concerned about the availability of freedom after China come back to Hong Kong. So what did the Chinese do? The Chinese, they stimulate up the local economy. When people selling their homes in Hong Kong real estate value was very high, as high as in Manhattan. So people capitalized on it and move out. The Chinese came in and buy it back up. So get the real estate price even higher than what it was originally. Okay, and they also encourage local investors to go into China and invest. Treat the Hong Kong Chinese as Chinese. So no restriction. You go and invest, and then we will help you. And then they build up factories and business networking to build textile, especially textile and toys. And simple electronics, they do it. The interface is in Hong Kong, but some of the factories, instead of building up in Hong Kong, they build up in China. This is cheaper, and do the trade through that channel. Okay, and then the Chinese also invest heavily in the financial market. Okay. Now, then in 1990. Now, the Hong Kong economy comes right back, very prosperous. Everything is nice because the Chinese economy was very good. Then a lot of those immigrants left, they came back. They came back to Hong Kong, but they still retain their new citizenship because in the UK, Australia, everywhere. Because when they get the passport, they came back. And some of them even maintain the children overseas, in Canada, in Australia, that they can go to school. And the parents will fly back and work in Hong Kong. Because a lot of those new immigrants moving to the new country could not easily find a good job. They went back. All right. Now, but during that period, light industry, all the things that I described, the artificial flowers, the calculators, having calculator, the toy, the textile industry, they started to move out of Hong Kong into China. So that we are also very familiar with that. And during that time, the Hong Kong manufacturing sector started to dry up, all move up. Okay. And Chinese entrepreneurs will come into Hong Kong and invest. Now, the Hong Kong Chinese are not the main investor in Hong Kong anymore. The Chinese come in and invest the money in Hong Kong and make the economy more prosperous. Okay? And then Hong Kong just retained as a service sector economy, which is banking and so on. All right? Now, I have something to show you the newspaper on the day of the return of South China Morning Post. And then we have, congratulations letters from all the world leaders, from Bill Clinton, from the South Korea president, Philippine president, Tony Blair, United Nations, Albright. Okay. They all paint a very beautiful picture for the future of Hong Kong. They all paint a very beautiful picture. Hong Kong will be prosperous, with China, everything will be fine, but only talking about the economy. Okay? And then some of them also said, service sector, already they believe Hong Kong will have only one industry left, which is service sector. All right? And then USA Today also very positive, very ambitious that Hong Kong will be good. All right? And then now, here is something. Except that young, they fear. They have hope, but they do have fear because they look a little bit further, the younger generation, during independence. All right? So it tells you how the sentiment of Hong Kong at that time, which means that they were from nobody and become somebody. Now, we still remember in the 70s and 80s, Milton Friedman said the most entrepreneurial and freedom of choice country in the world was Hong Kong. And also economically, the Asian tigers, the four tigers, Singapore, Thailand, Korea, South Korea, and Hong Kong were the four tigers. Okay, and even Singapore was not totally democratic. It's very possible, not totally democratic, because it almost one party government. Hong Kong is the most free country that they can identify.
Chris, the four little tigers, did you say Thailand?
Thailand, yeah.
No, Taiwan.
Oh, Taiwan. Oh, okay. Okay, Taiwan, Thailand, Singapore, Hong Kong.
No, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Singapore, South Korea.
South Korea. Okay. So now I end up with showing you a small street.
寻，我的有情人呀，莫非也了心？为什么呀断了心？我等待呀到如今，夜有深呀月有明，只能怀抱起深情。他一去呀成一生，唱出我的心头恨。我有一段情呀，唱给春风听。春风替我问一问，为什么他要断音讯？夜有深呀，月有明，只能怀抱起深情。
And I think Dan is going to continue the presentation.
This year is the 20th anniversary of the handover of Hong Kong back to China. So this is a very opportune time to be discussing this topic. And Chris and I would like to thank Ruth Moran for organizing this very timely two-session talk about Hong Kong. And we also want to thank Bob Moran for helping us out with all the slides, so we would have been stumbling over each other during this. And also, I think Bob will put this online so that people who may have missed the talks can also view. Today's session is the post-handover period from 1997 to the present day. After the handover, Chris Patton went on to become the European Union's Commissioner for External Affairs. Later, he went on to become the chairman of the BBC, and then to become the Chancellor of Oxford University, where he is still there today. The Union Jack was replaced by a new Hong Kong flag. The 5 petals of the Bohemia flower, indigenous to Hong Kong, symbolizes harmony, and the red background represents China. The poor queen had her portraits removed from all government offices, and the People's Liberation Army troops entered Hong Kong to stay for the first time. By mutual agreement, the Chinese troops are always confined to their barracks. They do not come out in their uniform carrying guns, which would have unnerved the local people. 1997 coincided with the Asian financial crisis. It started in Thailand mainly due to overborrowing. It spread to Hong Kong and Southeast Asia. And China came to Hong Kong's aid by allowing millions of mainland tourists to visit Hong Kong, and that boosted the local economy. Now, previously, visits to Hong Kong by mainlanders was highly restricted, but that year China changed the rules and allowed and encouraged mainlanders to come to Hong Kong to spend money. So the first few years, life went on fine. And before the British left, as Chris was explaining, the British negotiated certain terms, certain rules by which Hong Kong would be governed after the handover. Those rules were incorporated into two documents: the Sino-British Joint Declaration of 1984, and later, the Basic Law of Hong Kong. I have a copy here, which is a kind of mini constitution. It has 160 articles and 22 addendums. Now, rather than read through the documents, I've summarized here 5 basic principles that are governing Hong Kong today based on these two documents. These can be considered to be promises made by China. One country, two systems, meaning even though Hong Kong and China are now one country, they promise to respect Hong Kong's existing system and keep that separate from the socialist system in China. One country, but two systems. Hong Kong people governing Hong Kong. Apart from foreign affairs and defense, Hong Kong was allowed to manage its own affairs. A high degree of autonomy, implying that Hong Kong will be left alone to manage itself without interference from China. But as you will see in a few minutes, how high is a question. They promised to keep this system unchanged for 50 years until 2047. So we got 30 years more of supposedly the prevailing system. The last one is most important. Ultimate aim is to have universal suffrage, allowing Hong Kong people to have fair and open elections for its own chief executive. Universal suffrage. Now keep this page in mind because we will be coming back to it. But at this point I would like to discuss a very important topic, the Hong Kong judicial system. In my opinion, Hong Kong's judicial system is its most valuable asset. It is the cornerstone of a system of law and order. It inspires confidence, and it ensures that contracts are enforceable, legal recourse is available, and disputes can be resolved impartially. Now, under this system, when the British were governing Hong Kong, the highest level of legal appeal anyone can make is to the Privy Council in England. After the handover, the Court of Final Appeal in Hong Kong assumed that it is to be the final say. Having said that, Basic Law Article 158 says, the power of interpretation of this law shall be vested in the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress of China. So the question arises, is Hong Kong's Court of Final Appeal last word? Or does China's National People's Congress have the final say? Some people say China, like Britain, before the handover, should be the final authority. Others say that that would contravene the principle of Hong Kong people governing Hong Kong. Let's examine some facts that will give you an indication where that dichotomy lies. Since the handover, China has made 5 legal rulings concerning Hong Kong. 3 of the rulings overturned or preempted Hong Kong's courts. 2 of them affirmed the positions taken by Hong Kong. The rulings involved immigration, sovereign immunity, the length of the term of Hong Kong's chief executive, eligibility to retake an oath of office to the local legislature. We don't have time to go through each of these rulings, but later on, if you're interested, I can discuss them individually with you. It's important to note that in June of 2014, China's State Council, the highest governing body, stated that China had, quote, comprehensive jurisdiction over Hong Kong, and that Hong Kong judges should be administrators and patrons. This statement should not come as any surprise, because in a Leninist-inspired socialist system, the function of the courts is to facilitate the agenda of the Communist Party. After each of China's controversial rulings, pro-democracy groups mounted huge protests, charging that China was undermining Hong Kong's judicial independence. Now, are Hong Kong people just being paranoid? Or is there reason to be alarmed? A number of incidents that have happened since the handover will give us some indication what the answer is. These are just a selection of incidents. There are others. The missing book publisher. In 2016, a local publisher known for publishing exposés implicating Chinese leaders, including President Xi Jinping, suddenly disappeared. On investigation, it was learned that he had been kidnapped in Hong Kong by Chinese agents and taken to China. Hong Kong people were alarmed by China's extrajudicial intrusion into Hong Kong and the attack on Hong Kong's freedom of the press. Second case, the kidnapped tycoon. Similarly, a Chinese tycoon living in Hong Kong was spirited out in the dark of night, disappeared, all recorded on closed-circuit TV. Case number 3, the British human rights activists. Just last week, an Englishman flew to Hong Kong intending to set up an NGO, non-governmental organization, to monitor human rights in Hong Kong. On arriving at the airport, he was denied entry when British parliamentarians protested. Hong Kong's chief executive, Carrie Lam, stated that Hong Kong can deny anyone entry, including, she added gratuitously, the former governor Chris Patten. The background to that is, Chris Patten was quite well loved by the local people, but he was despised by China for introducing in the last minute democratic reforms just before the handover. Pro-democracy groups feared that this incident is a precursor to limiting freedom of movement and the beginning of government control over who is allowed in Hong Kong and who's not allowed to come in. Already, former Tiananmen massacre activists have been long banned from Hong Kong. Case number 4, Chinese leaders' statement on joint declaration. A high-level Chinese official recently stated that the Sino-British joint declaration is only a part of history and was no longer relevant. Although another Chinese leader later reversed the statement, that failed to assuage Hong Kong people's fears that China no longer intends to respect the joint declaration. And the last case, national education in schools. For years, Hong Kong government has been trying to introduce the study of so-called Chinese national education in all schools, fearing that this was an excuse to sneak in socialist ideology and brainwash Hong Kong's children. Massive street protests took place, and the idea was abandoned. But just last week, another government initiative was announced, making the study of Chinese history compulsory from a very young age, a cause for more anxiety and protests. The point of giving you all this detail is to give you a glimpse of what is causing the friction between Hong Kong people and the Hong Kong government, which is seen by many as nothing more than a surrogate of China. Repeated incidents like these have caused many Hong Kongers to question whether Hong Kong, after the handover, is being governed under one country, one system, or one country, two systems, as promised. Okay, what does Article 45 of the Basic Law says? The ultimate aim is to have universal suffrage nominated by a broad representative committee in accordance with democratic procedures. That's what the Basic Law says. Now let's take a look at what actually happens in an election in Hong Kong. Okay. Here's how the chief executive is being elected now. Step 1, an election committee of 1,200 electors handpicked by China nominates candidates. Step 2, candidates must pass Chinese patriotism test of country of Hong Kong. Step 3, the election committee members cast votes to elect the chief executive And step 4, the winning candidate must be, quote, appointed by Central People's Government before taking office. Several comments. Basically, 1,200 pro-China businessmen are doing nominating and voting. The patriotism test is non-specific, non-quantifiable, and opens it up to China's interpretation as to who's a patriot, and therefore who can run and who cannot. The winner must be appointed by China before taking office. Pro-democracy groups take serious issue with this. Firstly, on the basis that the pro-China nominating committee is not broadly representative, nor is the system in accordance with democratic procedures as required by the Basic Law. To make matters worse, the winner has to be appointed by China, so the Democrats are asking, why bother to have an election? Appoint the guy, right? From the perspective of the pro-democracy groups, what was promised was universal suffrage, what was delivered was a rigged election system. This is the crux of the problem facing Hong Kong today. In 2014, pro-democracy groups got together, condemned the process as a fake election, demanded universal suffrage, and took to the streets by the thousands in what became known as the Umbrella Movement. Let me give you a rundown on what happened during that movement. The umbrella movement was named for the umbrellas used as shields against pepper spray by the police. Tens of thousands of pro-democracy students took to the streets, mostly young people. They occupied and disrupted business in the Central Business District. The whole thing lasted almost three months, 79 days. The kids went on hunger strike. It was peaceful, organized, they even cleaned the streets every day. Tents were set up for food, shelter. The police used pepper spray and tear gas to try and disperse the students. All the while, the Hong Kong government adamantly refused to negotiate with the students on China's version of universal suffrage. World attention was focused on Hong Kong, and everyone was afraid that the Chinese troops might be called out and Tiananmen massacre would be repeated. Fortunately, the movement and the demonstrations ended peacefully. Police removed the students, dismantled the tents, scores of students, not scores, 900 were arrested, 900. Major divisions in society emerged. Children against parents, office workers against office workers, friends who would no longer be friends, because one side felt that students are irresponsible, going too far, demanding something unreasonable, that China is the new landlord, and the kids who say, we were duped and we were taken for a ride, promised universal suffrage, and given a great election. At the end of the demonstration, the students left, and they left us a message. We'll be back. So this is not the end of the story. Stay tuned. The leader of the umbrella movement was a young student activist called Joshua Wong. 21 years old, he founded a new pro-democracy party. He started fighting for democracy as a teenager, has been arrested several times, physically attacked, and accused of being an agent of the CIA when he was invited to testify in the human rights congressional hearing in Washington. In 2014, Time magazine noted him the most influential teenager in Asia. Here's Joshua Wong being arrested. On October 5th, 2017, the Bipartisan Congressional Executive Commission on China announced their intention to nominate Joshua Wong, 2 other student leaders, and the Umbrella Movement for the 2018 next year's Nobel Peace Prize. Citing their peaceful efforts to bring about political reform and protect the autonomy and freedoms guaranteed Hong Kong in the Sino-British Joint Declaration. Unfortunately, as we speak, Joshua Wong is at this moment sitting in a prison cell in Hong Kong. He was charged with unlawful assembly during the Umbrella Movement. On hearing about his arrest, Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi issued a statement that reads in part, "This egregious decision, which disqualifies these champions of universal suffrage from running for elected office for 5 years, is an unjust, underhanded attempt to shut down the legitimate democratic aspirations of the people of Hong Kong." August 17, 2017. Some important background. Joshua Wong was arrested 3 years ago during the Umbrella Movement and released on a sentence of community service. But this year, during President Xi's visit to Hong Kong in July to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the handover, he stated that Hong Kong government should enforce its laws more vigorously. Almost immediately after that, in early August, Joshua Wong was re-arrested, sentenced a second time, and this time with a penalty of imprisonment. 2 days ago, a group of 12 international lawyers co-signed a letter criticizing Hong Kong's courts for the treatment of Joshua Wong and the students. The group stated that the imprisonment of Joshua Wong and 2 other students was, quote, a serious threat to the rule of law and a breach of the principle of double jeopardy in violation of the United Nations International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. In Hong Kong, being arrested and imprisoned for demonstrating peacefully is very rare in the whole history of Hong Kong. Democrats believe that Joshua's prison sentence was an attempt by China to suppress Hong Kong's democratic movement by making an example of Joshua Wong. There's an old saying in China, 殺雞儆猴, kill the chicken to frighten the monkey. Kill the chicken to frighten the monkey. That said, 3 Hong Kong court judges upheld the sentence, agreed with the lower court that freedom of assembly has its limits when public order is at stake. In Hong Kong, Joshua Wong and the students have their admirers, mostly young people and democracy advocates. They also have detractors, mostly conservative, older folks and business people. His supporters call him a hero. His critics or the troublemaker? I'll leave it up to you to decide. Now let's go back to the very beginning. Key principles governing Hong Kong, promises made by China. One country, two systems, Hong Kong people governing Hong Kong, high degree of autonomy, 50 years unchanged, ultimate goal, universal suffrage. Think about that. And ask yourself, has China lived up to its promises to Hong Kong? You tell me.
I think we are going into the final portion of this presentation. Is Dan and I independently give our assessment on the outlook of Hong Kong. So I don't think he and I will think alike, but we are in common in a lot of things. Okay? So what we're going to do is I will present my case, he will present his, and then we'll listen to you, and you can ask us questions and challenge us here and there, and that will be fun.
Here's where the friendship gets tested.
Okay, so this is mine. So the way I do it is I pick up all the presentations that has been made so far during dance and summarize it and put it into a factual sheet to say this is what the assumption, the circumstances is. Right? And the first one is China will be a one-party government. No matter what we do about it, it's going to be true for a long time. For us to change China to become a multi-party government, I don't think I can see it in my lifetime. So we'll accept that in my assumption to project the future. One country, two systems. One country, two systems. If so long as we talk with the Chinese say, yes, one country, two systems, with the provision that is a Chinese interpretation of what is economic freedom, what is political discipline. So now their interpretation is strong central government influence. Now we know how Chinese economy works. At the very beginning, most of the industry enterprise in China were semi-state owned. Many semi-state owned is just government has a lot of influence to act. But it doesn't mean that they don't have their freedom to act economically. And they are prosperous, they're making money. Okay? But they have to listen. We cannot make private sector judgment in China. In Hong Kong in the past, and also in this country, the private sector can make their own judgment for the benefit of the private sector, whatever their mission is. But in China, you have to listen to a major shareholder to tell you what you can do. That I think will continue to persist, no matter what that will happen in Hong Kong. The political distance, okay, this is mandated. So, because there's no democracy, or very little political democracy in China. And as I explained to you earlier in my first part of Chinese history, Chinese people normally say, okay, you tell me what to do, government, I do it. So long as I have my flexibility to take care of my family, to take care of my friends. So I think the Chinese government still today think they have the right to tell their citizens, which is their children, according to them, what to do. So we have to accept that in my projection of what is going to happen. Right? And the market innovation is restrained. So China is Hong Kong is not because Hong Kong is vibrant. Hong Kong is very creative. Hong Kong can do a lot of things somebody else cannot do. China has been wanting Hong Kong because of the financial center. Hong Kong has been the financial center for Asia for a long, long time. The early part of the prosperity of China back in 1970, is through Hong Kong's influence, helping China to prosper. And they understand it in Hong Kong. Now they're still developing Shanghai, Shenzhen as a satellite financial center, eventually, hopefully, to replace Hong Kong. But because of what Dan has also explained earlier, the law and order, the respect of intellectual property, private property is non-existent in China. So they have to establish the precedent in China before they can replace Hong Kong. Otherwise, people will still go back to Hong Kong. So the biggest contribution of Hong Kong is being a financial center. Now, because of that, Hong Kong is as I showed to you back in 1997, people would think Hong Kong would be only a financial center, only industry in Hong Kong. They are concerned. That is not a bad thing. Like Manhattan is the financial center for the whole world and for America. But Manhattan is not a country. Manhattan is part of New York. New York has other industry supporting total population of New York. Okay, so that cannot work out. Originally, Hong Kong can get into design, just like Denmark is doing. Hong Kong can get into research and development in IT and all that. But that has all been taken over by Chinese mainland. So Hong Kong is left of all this. And then secondly, the manufacturing is lost. Since the 80s, the 90s, the light industry has all moved up to China. So you have the same problem as what we see here. The general workers who are technicians and so on, they are not financial guys or not engineers and teachers. They cannot find a job. They cannot find reasonable job. So, all right. Now, based on that assumption, this is my projection of the future development. Migration of Chinese back to mainland already started. People in Hong Kong have to move back to China because they may be able to find a better job. They can be retired there better, cheaper, because Hong Kong is a very expensive city. All right? And they may be able to go there and then integrate with the Chinese society back in China. They have a new wave of brain drain. Younger people who can afford to go overseas, they will start to go overseas. And I have seen a lot of established families sending their children to prep schools in the United States. They may get college and eventually they get a job overseas. So those are intellectuals and young students. And I also know a lot of our former friends who has a commitment in the past to do something good for Hong Kong. They're well-educated doctors and lawyers. They said, okay, they have done their part, they cannot stay there anymore and move back to Hong Kong. Now, central government will be more assertive to intervene in democracy. That's exactly what Dan pointed out. Hong Kong government or Hong Kong people can never argue with the central government. They have a reason to tell you their interpretation is right and you're wrong. So you have to listen to them. If you want to stay in Hong Kong, I think you have to listen to what the government tells you to do. With the basic freedom of you can travel, you can have your money in and out, and you can have some degree of flexibility more than those in China. All right. China to take the most. Okay, no, this is not. Okay. The most likely scenario. This is basically what I'm trying to write down. The most likely scenario, most optimistic scenario. So, what can change the picture to be better than what I described here? Is the most optimistic scenario is China to take a more international leadership, especially in Southeast Asia. Now, what I'm trying to say is that if China is doing the way they are doing today, and they are only looking China first, just like we said, America first, they will do everything for the interest of Chinese European buyers. And they will never think about what is good about democracy. they think their way is much better than what they have seen outside of China on democracy. They haven't seen the real point of democracy yet. So if they can take a more higher international leadership, meaning that interface with Thailand, with Singapore, and understand what they need and work together with them, because they are more democratic, and they may be influenced to be more democratic and take more responsibility. Now, when you take more responsibility, you have to synchronize with the other economy, the other country, to mitigate the differences. Okay? That would be my hope, that the Chinese will take the leadership role, going to do something outside now. One positive action they're taking. We heard about One Belt, One Road. They're going to build the connection from China through Afghanistan to Europe and come back. Now, by doing that, I think they can achieve some of the exposure they need to understand what the international community would be relative to what Chinese cultural differences are.
I think we can still be friends. When Chris suggested that we talk about the future of Hong Kong, immediately what Yogi Berra said about predicting came to mind. Yogi Berra said, it's tough predicting, especially when it's about the future. So keep that in mind as I try to predict. I'm actually quite optimistic about Hong Kong economically. It's a small place with 7 million people, but its foreign exchange reserves is $400 billion. 4 times the United States, ranking number 6 in the world. And every year, through very good fiscal management, Hong Kong runs a surplus. So the problem with the budget is not how to make up the deficit, like, right? But how to spend the surplus. So it's a rich place, but the market domestically is rather small, and the economy, the local economy is very mature. So my guess is that Hong Kong will grow Hong Kong will grow by the world average rate of growth, but I don't think it has any particular thing that's going to make it break out into a high growth path. Second point, I think that, agreeing with Chris, there will be a geographical integration. There will be a geographical integration with China. By next year, there are 2 major infrastructure projects that will be completed. One is one of the longest bridges in the world, 14 miles. It's going to connect Hong Kong, a place called Zhuhai, and Macau, in this region called the Pearl River Delta. It will make these 3 cities a borderless area, similar to the tri-state area you drive from New York to New Jersey to Connecticut. You don't think about it. It will make it a region like that. The second project is Hong Kong is linking up with a high-speed rail to Guangzhou. Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Hong Kong high-speed expressway. That will link Hong Kong up to China's nationwide high-speed rail system. Think about it. Greater access, faster access will mean more easily available markets for Hong Kong in the huge hinterland of China. So new business opportunities, economically very positive, integration geographically with China is coming. There will be a cultural dilution, or what I don't think this is a word, but never mind. Mainlandization of Hong Kong. 10% of Hong Kong people are already from China speaking Mandarin. With the program for immigration to Hong Kong from mainland China, that percentage will go up. You walk around Hong Kong, you hear Mandarin spoken quite a lot these days. So it's inevitable that Chinese, Cantonese language, culture, habits will be diluted, and it will become more like a city that is in China than outside of China. Societal division among Hong Kongers. Already I talked about pro-democracy and pro-government camps being at each other's throats. In terms of culture, mainlanders in Hong Kong sometimes don't get along too well. They need to get used to living side by side. And then Hong Kong also has a wealth gap. Rich very rich, poor very poor. But luckily, Hong Kong has a huge middle class, and those at the poverty line are important, but relatively small percentage. Greater interference and control. I think if you call a spade, one country, one system looks like it is already happening. So this business about one country, two systems is going to end up being a fantasy, right? Rise in self-censorship. Very interesting. Hong Kong is a very mature market. If you want to do business in Hong Kong, there's not much room to grow. Everyone has to go to China. There's huge hinterland, a big marketplace. But if you want to go to China, when I was doing business there, people said to me, don't bite the hand that feeds you. All right? You want to do business in China? You better be careful what you say and stay out of democracy and human rights and all that. And a lot of people are towing the party line. Self-censorship. That's a shame, because when you have a country or a place where people are afraid to speak about certain things, it's a very constraining, it's just not fun, right? Brain drain, Chris talked about this, a lot of people going overseas with the political turmoil in Hong Kong, street demonstrations, can't afford to buy an apartment, property values sky high, a lot of kids are going overseas, studying overseas, not coming back. Brain drain. Democratic movement tied to political change in China. I think political liberalization in China is a prerequisite for progress with democracy in Hong Kong. China is huge like an elephant. Hong Kong is just the tip. Where the elephant goes, the tail must follow. So without change in China, I'm afraid that the democracy movement in Hong Kong will be severely stymied. And sadly, the brunt of repressive measures will be borne by the youngsters who are so passionate, idealistic, and willing to pay the price. Challenge, Hong Kong's finding a new role. You remember when Chris talked about history, Hong Kong started as a small trading outpost. It evolved into what they call an entrepot between China and Western countries. It emerged into a manufacturing and exporting center when refugees came to Hong Kong. Refugees left when China liberalized and Hong Kong became a service economy, right? The question today is what's next? What is the future role of Hong Kong in this environment that we have been discussing? It's a challenging question, and it remains to be seen. Finally, China fills global leadership vacuum. As America retreats from the world and becomes more introverted, withdrawing from international agreements and organizations, they just said basically withdraw from UNESCO. China has stated that they are most willing and happy to fill the leadership vacuum that is left behind. China's activities in the South China Sea is just a precursor of its expansionist objectives, in my opinion. That they will reach beyond the South China Sea into areas all over the world, Africa, Central Asia, through their infrastructure building and so on, is not the question. That's given. The question is, what will be the response of America and the Western world to China's ascendancy to the global stage? Will we find ways to work together, to be cooperative, or will we be belligerent and risk conflict, confrontation, and even war? Something I leave you to think about. Thank you.
Any questions? Any?
I just wonder in this whole emerging dynamic, what your feeling is about the relationship between China and Russia, and how that might shift the balance.
I think Russia and China are in terms, and because they have a similar philosophy, economically or very stupid of me. The way I look at it, Russia is focused on Middle East, Europe, that area. China is focused on America, all the Far East and so on. They become trading blocks. You know, and there are some people saying that within the next 5 to 10 years, we will see more trading blocks. Meaning that America will be for both North and South America. And it depends on what Donald Trump is going to do with Europe. Okay? Europe is a natural ally to America, but if he gives up Europe, then I think we don't know what they're going to do. Between China and Russia, they understand each other quite well, and I don't anticipate them to fight against each other. They may join force and fight against this country.
I would tend to agree with Chris, and I would look at it from a historical perspective. When Mao Zedong was a young man, he studied Marxism and Leninism, and he became enamored with it, and he was committed to the establishment of a socialist country. So China and the Soviet Union and then Russia share a common ideology from the very beginning. Stalin was a supporter of Mao Zedong. And both Russia and China was supporting North Korea. North Korea, and then later in Vietnam. So they have a very strong historical link. I think I agree with Chris in that they probably will remain friends. But they have taken also different paths. And in politics, friends today can be enemies tomorrow and then go back to being friends. So depending on what suits them at the time, I think that they, in general, will be potentially a bloc, a very powerful bloc. dealing with the Western countries, European Union, and the United States.
Yes.
Yeah, Chris and Dan, recognizing the untidiness of democracy and some of the inefficiencies of democracy, something that we love, would democracy be in the best interest of China? It's a simple question.
Yeah, it's a simple question, but the simple questions are the hardest questions. A lot of people say that China is not ready for democracy. And China obviously supports that view and likes to cite the case of the breakup of the Soviet Union, where they say that you must be economically at a certain point in order to introduce democracy. If you try to do that in reverse and bring democracy ahead of economic development, then what you will get is a breakup like the Soviet Union. That's their favorite argument. But my own opinion is that people who say that China is not ready for democracy tend to be those who believe that you're never ready for democracy. Do you think the US was ready for democracy when we kicked out the British? It's never a good time for democracy except now. I asked a friend of mine in Hong Kong, hey, what about this thing? Maybe you wait a bit. In fact, during the umbrella movement and the whole controversy of the universal suffrage, China offered Hong Kong to keep the existing system where they nominate the candidates, but they will allow everyone in Hong Kong to vote for whoever you choose, provided the nominees are chosen by China. I called a friend in Hong Kong who was involved deeply in the democracy movement. And I said, hey, why don't you go for it? Take the first step, and in Hong Kong they call it 代住先. Translation, pocket that first and fight for more later. You know what she told me? Dan, democracy is like pregnancy. You can't be half pregnant. Is democracy good for China? I think that when a country is very backwards, poor, and trying to build itself up, I suppose half an argument can be made that you need to maintain control and stability in favor of economic growth. But when it reaches a certain level of economic development, as China has reached today, being the number 2 power economically in the world, you've got to loosen up. You've got to liberalize. Why? People's aspirations grow as their bellies are full and there's a shelter over their head. People want more. They want the intangible. Who are we? What does our government represent? Are they acting in our interests? Is he working for me or controlling me? People want more. So, there's another theory that says China's economic miracle is nothing more than a political time bomb. Underneath the surface, there's a great deal of pent-up resentment and a great deal of desire to be free. Ask any student, 300,000 Chinese students studying in America today. Ask any one of them, why are you here? What do you think about China? Standard answer. I breathe free. I'm happy. I say what I want. My friends and my activities. I feel free. Is democracy good for China? Unequivocally, in my humble opinion, yes. Thank you.
Let me address it. Now there's one part, democracy, in my interpretation, is bottom up. Democracy has to be bottom up. Top down is not authoritarian. And when China, Henry Kissinger went to China and convinced Deng Xiaoping to open up the market, the expectation provided is that through economic growth, you can culture democracy because economic growth demands bottom-up effort to improve productivity, to improve prosperity. Okay? Because one man, central government, decided to do it. Then all of them work together for their own common interest, and that is democracy. But unfortunately, if you look at also the Chinese culture, in my previous presentation was this, has been always seniority. The parent is always right. The government is always right. You listen to me, you will be good. Okay, that has been there for 3,000 years. Now to change their mindset to adopt foreign model of democracy will be tough, will be difficult for them. And at the same time, they interpret their own democracy the way I've been trying to present it, the way they're talking to the world. Okay? My democracy is a limited democracy. It's not full or total democracy. Is democracy good or bad? It's depending on circumstances, depending on the stage of the society growth. All right. So in some places, for example, in Iraq, in Saddam Hussein's time, democracy is no good. They are not capable. They are not ready for democracy yet. You need a certain type of dictatorship, and slowly it will go to democracy. So I same as then, I truly believe in the long run, democracy is very useful and helpful. Whether China is ready for democracy, I think they are, but it will take time. While I have some time.
With all the food for thought, and we will be thinking for the next week, I just want to thank you guys so much. Fabulous presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you very much. Maybe if there's a question, we can maybe take one more, otherwise we can call it quits. Yeah.
Well, first I would definitely like to thank you. It's a topic that almost nobody in the room knows anything about. The question is, it was a 3-hour speech yesterday in China. And I watched a little bit of it, but it sounded repetitious, so I couldn't listen, translate it. Was there anything in there that reflected on the future of Hong Kong?
Let me try to understand the question.
The party congresses.
The conference.
The congresses.
Yeah.
It was about the future of China.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I spent some time reading it, and in fact I called up my friend in China and asked his input on his interpretation. He is investing and is doing business and living in factories and hiring a lot of people. He basically said that Xi Jinping, the president, has a vision. I think his vision is saying that it will be the century for China, the coming century is for China. And China will use soft power. They always like to use the word soft power versus hard power. Soft power is the diplomatic approach. Hard power meaning weapons, atomic bomb. So it's hard power. And it is true that culturally China would prefer to use soft power than hard power. They don't want to fight, harm. And but whether it's workable or not, we don't know. And when he says soft power is going to say, I come to your country, I help you to build a road. After you build a road, what you get, give you back to me. We'll give you access. Okay? Now that's what they do in Africa, in the Middle East, or in South America. But at the same time, there will be always conflict. And sometimes economic influence is worse than weapon, because it can be you can economically colonize a country. And just like Greece is talking, Germany is colonizing Greece economically like the Nazis, the same thing. So what they said is the same thing is Hong Kong will remain the same as what it is, what we like it or not. They said 50 years, give us 50 years freedom. Already, I said earlier, the decision is made one country, one system, not two systems. You either follow me or you can leave the country, and they still allow people to leave the country and go overseas.
Rich, that's a very good question. I think the party Congress has several purposes. The first is self-congratulation of Xi himself. We know what that's all about, right? Congratulating himself and a certain amount of self-aggrandizement. That's taken for granted. The second purpose is to establish Xi in a position and with a stature that he aspires to achieve on the same level and with the same standing as Mao Zedong and Deng Xiaoping. Now he says, I'm the third son of the Holy Trinity, that's what he's saying. He wants to establish himself at that level. As far as policies are concerned, no mention was made of Hong Kong directly, but a lot of inferences can be drawn from what was not said. I think we have now entered into a new era that is in contrast to Deng Xiaoping's era of liberalization and of free markets and what made China successful in those 30 years of 10% plus growth. I think what Xi has said, I'm not sure if he said it at the Congress yesterday, but he has said that China is now entering into a period of moderate growth of better quality, meaning greater state control. So the pendulum is swinging back to control, and the quality of growth is something that China has mentioned for the first time, and they are investing hugely on clean air, electric cars, solar farms. That is what they are investing in. So I think that the bottom line for Xi is that he believes that it is China's turn to lead and to assume a stature in this world that it deserves based on its size, its success, its history, its culture. So that ascendancy will challenge Western assumptions and past leadership by America and European countries. In that challenge, do we find a new paradigm, a new way to coexist, where there's a new already emerging power? Can we succeed in living together peacefully? Or are we headed for confrontation and conflict and potential war? That's the worrying question.
I one more point, just very quickly. Leadership is not a word that you have power. Leadership is something you give. You're the leader, you're the give, you have people to grow yourself. And I hope they don't misinterpret the word, because they think when you're a leader, you will make something with more money than the other, and this is not true.
Thanks for coming.